This is the Pixel 9 Pro XL. Now, I haven't made a video in quite a while and I'm quite excited to be back, but for context, I haven't really much experience using a Pixel phone. I've only ever gotten one Pixel phone before, and that was the Pixel 6, and I started making a review on it, but then I never finished it, I never uploaded it, that's why it's not on the channel. But from what I remember about it, I liked it, but there was nothing particularly great about it that stuck out to me. I don't remember being particularly wowed by the whole thing. But nevertheless, I do remember it being quite a decent phone, so I'm excited to try this one out. However, I think it's going to be quite a new experience for me using a Pixel now in 2024 in comparison to when I used the Pixel 6. Now, one of the first most noticeable things about it is this very box-like build, very iPhone-like, something I've heard other people say as well, and it's quite noticeable in terms of the general form factor of the phone, and then obviously that massive camera bump, which is an interesting look. I think some people like it, some people hate it, but I think for me, it looks cooler in person than it did seeing the photos of the phone online. One thing that is kind of common knowledge, and something I do remember about the Pixel 6, is generally a massive thing with the Pixels is the experience of Android on it. Obviously, Google make Android and Google make the hardware, so this should be the top of Android phones, and it should run the best version of Android, and it should be in sync the best with the hardware that Google produce. And in specifically 2024, one of the more exciting things about that is the incorporation of AI throughout, especially in the software, and specifically with Google, it's the whole Pixel experience that they have to offer, which other Androids don't. It's also interesting how Apple is also doing the same sort of thing, where a massive part of the iPhone 16 is the incorporation of Apple Intelligence, whereas with Google it's Gemini. So I'm kind of excited to see this whole Pixel experience, and that's kind of the most exciting part of reviewing this, but also the part I will be telling you about the most in the full review, and should be the part that you are really looking and listening out for. Anyway, going through everything one by one, like I said, it's a very high quality build, very high quality feel. It's got aluminium for the rails, but it's polished, so it's very shiny, looks a bit like stainless steel, and then Gorilla Glass Victus 2 for the front and back. The boxy build that I mentioned earlier does very much resemble an iPhone, and Mr. Who's the Boss made a very interesting point about how most iPhone users who transition to Android transition to a Pixel. So this was probably some sort of marketing strategy from Google to encourage more people to transition to the Pixel, since it's more iPhone-like, making the transition smoother for those users. In terms of the internals, it's got a 5060 mAh battery, and it's powered by the Google Tensor G4 chip, which is a 4nm chip. Pixels in general haven't been known for their speed, particularly. This is a bit faster than the previous generation, and problems with speed tend to show up after time rather than showing straight away, so that's the sort of thing you'll see in a long-term review. Additionally, it has got now a new ultrasonic fingerprint sensor rather than the optical fingerprint sensor. Basically, the difference is an optical fingerprint sensor shines a light on your finger and uses a little camera inside to take an image of the fingerprint and have a look if it's accurate. Whereas ultrasonic, it sends sound waves to your fingerprint, measures the ridges, and it bounces back onto the phone, and it then has a 3D image of your fingerprint. And ultrasonic is generally a better, more efficient, quicker, higher quality way of scanning your fingerprint, so this is definitely a bonus. Additionally, there's that thermometer positioned on the back of the phone where the cameras are, which has contributed to a new feature in the thermometer app where you can actually measure someone's body temperature, which is quite interesting, but more on that in a bit. And hearing of that is something I've never heard of before, a thermometer app, and there are those little features and little apps in the Pixel specifically which aren't common in other phones, which have a massive emphasis on software and AI, but just weird little things like the thermometer app. But before we start talking about the software in terms of the display, it is a 6.8 inch OLED 120Hz display with a 3000 nit peak, which is brighter than the screen on the previous Pixel. Then finally for the cameras, it's a kind of a minor upgrade this year, but for the main camera you got a 50 megapixel f1.7, and then the telephoto is a 48 megapixel 5x optical zoom, and then the ultra wide is a 48 megapixel f1.7 with dual pixel autofocus. In terms of the quick look that I've had at the camera app and the way that works is it's a very processed look. All the photos very sharp, extra sharpness for some people. You might like that, for some people you might not, but there'll be more of that in the full review in terms of actual tests. But talking about the camera app and talking about software and AI, a new feature that they've added, which I'm sure you've heard of, is the Add Me feature, where you can take a photo where, for example, someone is taking a photo of a group, but they want to be included in the photo. So that what they do is they take the first photo of the group, they keep the camera in the same position, they then join in on the photo on their own. So they're two separate images, and then AI merges them together to make it look like that person was initially included in the photo. You can even use this to make it so that there's two of you in one photo, which is kind of weird. It's a weird thing, I don't know if people really use it, but the first example of how they've really tried to use AI here in the camera app to try and improve the experience. In terms of the other many AI features, there's this new weather report feature on the weather app, and the weather app's quite nice actually, in my opinion, way better than what Samsung had. And the little weather report just summarizes the weather using AI. There's new features in the photo app like the magic editor, which allows you to select different parts of a photo and kind of ask it to reimagine it. So you select the sky and say, I want the sky to be stormy, or you'll select say an umbrella in the background of a photo and say, I want this umbrella to be blue, and the AI does all that for you. There's also a new screenshots app, which basically makes it so your screenshots are searchable, because every single screenshot is given a description using AI, so it just describes what it sees. If the screenshot is of a web page, then it provides links and information about that page. And basically it's just the idea that you can search for these screenshots just by describing them. It's a bit gimmicky, I think, that they've made it its own app. It's just the execution of that in general, I think, is a bit gimmicky. Could have just incorporated it into the Photos app, but they have left it as its own separate app for the moment. There's also this zoom enhance feature where you can zoom in massively on a photo and AI will try and reimagine what that photo, zoomed in version of the photo, would have looked like if it was at a better quality. This doesn't seem to work that well at the moment, but it probably depends what you're zooming in on. There's the call notes feature where if you're on a call, AI is recording the call and it takes notes on it and kind of summarizes the call, which I think could actually be really interesting, really useful, especially for something like tech support or something like that, or some sort of business call. And then additionally, they've done this app called Pixel Studio, where you can ask AI to create any photo that you want it to. You can come up with something just really, really random, like a dog flying in space eating a burger, for example. Or you can ask it to do stuff more realistic, like imagine this sort of interior design with this sort of color scheme. With something like interior design, I found that it works really nicely. When you try and do something a lot more abstract and just creative and a bit weird, then it just ends up just doing a really crappy execution. Additionally, like I mentioned before, there's the thermometer app, which I've never seen on the phone before. I didn't even know this was a thing up until I got this phone. But a new feature that they added was the fact that you can now take someone's body temperature with the thermometer app. On top of that, you can measure the temperature of certain surfaces and liquids and stuff, which, I don't know, maybe could be useful. I can imagine that being a thing that you use once every 3 months, for example, but it doesn't seem like something you'd be using a lot. In terms of the general Pixel experience of using the Android software, it's very smooth, very clean. A lot like one of the things I always loved about iOS is just how smooth and refined it feels, and Pixel does have a massive part of that refinement, possibly the most refined version of Android that I've experienced so far. However, one little thing that I just don't like is the app drawer. It's very chaotic. The way you just have to scroll through everything, you can't like organize it into folders. I do really like what Apple did with the app library, where it's a lot more organized, because if you're going to shove all the apps in one place, you might as well do it in an organized way rather than a unorganized way, if that makes sense. But other than that, a massive part of the Pixel experience this year is Gemini. Now, Gemini is a direct competitor with Apple Intelligence, basically the idea with both being that there is this AI that you can directly interact with, which has access to all sorts of functions in the phone. What I mean by that is, it works the same way Siri or Google Assistant would work, in a sense. You can ask it to set timers, you can ask it for information, that sort of thing. Additionally, as an AI that has access to everything in your phone, it has access to your emails. This is if you allow that setting. It has access to your emails, your photos, all of that sort of information, in which it allows the AI to get to know you personally, and it makes it so that you can ask the AI personal questions about yourself, such as when a certain flight is, or about when a certain event's going to happen, and it knows because it knows your emails or it knows your text messages, it knows that this person told you that, and so you can use it really to kind of help organize information and access information very quickly. This then allows you to make some, quite complex requests. For example, it might know your personal schedule and it knows the schedule of a university, for example, and you can ask it to compare the two, find the certain free slots, things like that. On top of that, you can use it, say, when you're watching a YouTube video, and ask it to summarize certain things from that YouTube video or specific details that you want from that YouTube video, or whatever is on your screen at the time. And this is just the situations I'm thinking of right now, but there's so many different things you can do with an AI like this. Gemini specifically has a very conversational feature as well within it, where you can kind of have a whole conversation with it rather than just talking to the assistant, which for certain things could be more beneficial. One weird thing with Gemini is sometimes it will use the Google Assistant for certain features, for example, like setting a timer. When you ask Gemini to do it, it shows you that Gemini itself is asking Google Assistant to do it. So they've kind of kept those two things separate rather than giving Gemini all of that ability, which I think is a bit weird, a bit unnecessary. They should combine it all into Gemini. But Gemini as a feature is very impressive and has a lot of potential and is continuously improving. And I'm thinking of making a whole review on Gemini specifically, and then when Apple Intelligence comes out, comparing the two and making a whole video on that. And that's kind of everything I have to say for the first impressions. I'm going to release a full in-depth review soon, in which I'll be looking at certain things in a lot more detail, telling you about my experience more, especially things like battery life and speed and that sort of thing. But yeah, other than that, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And make sure to give the video a like and comment for the sake of the algorithm, because it helps. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Salam.